Okay. So still I was getting the same error. Okay. So we'll see that in some other example. So I'll create another project. Now let's see how can we establish. Okay, so how can you enable communication between two process definitions? Okay, I want to establish communication between two process definitions. Okay, so I'll create one new project. Okay. So now this is my main process, and I will create one sub process as well. I will create one more process. So first I will create a simple data objects. Okay, so these are my objects that I have. Now, so when you enable two processes to communicate, okay, when you enable two processes to communicate, so they will be communicating by exchanging messages. Okay, they'll be communicating by exchanging messages. So through web service calls. Okay, through web service calls, they will be exchanging messages. Okay, and here, and these processes will be using virtual binding. Okay, so they will be using web services as a primary, so communication model. But they won't be using the transport part of web service. So they will be using only virtualized binding. Okay, they will be using only virtualized binding to communicate with each other by exchanging messages and using some web services model. Okay, so when you're configuring them, okay, when you're configuring, so these applications, so these processes, first you should understand the role of your process. So whether the role of your process is provider or client. Okay, and you also should understand. Okay, you also should understand. So what exactly is the communication model that you require? Okay, so we have three communication models: synchronous, so asynchronous, and async with callback. So synchronous, rarely you will be using synchronous communication in BPM because the BPM applications are long-running processes. So you're not going to use synchronous communication. So you will be using async or async with callback. So if you're not expecting any reply from the business process, okay, if you're not expecting any reply from the business process, so you configure that as async one. But most of the business processes, so they do expect response. Okay, so even though they're long-running processes, you have to send some response at later point of time. So you have to configure async with callback. So when you want to use async with callback, so you have to use one concept called correlations. Okay, you have to use a concept called correlation. Okay, so in our case, so these processes will be communicating with each other. Okay, these processes will be communicating with each other, so by using async with callback model. Okay, they will be communicating using async with callback model. So that's why, so you will be using the correlations as well. Okay, so we'll be using correlations as well. And at the same time, so when you're creating these business processes, so first you have to create the provider. Okay, first you have to create the provider. So then you configure the client. Okay, then you'll be configuring the client. So in our case, so both the processes will be having both the roles. Okay, these two processes will be having both type of roles. Okay, so we have two processes. Okay, two processes we have. So each one will be having a role. So this is our negotiation process, and this is the gateway process. So gateway process will be sending request to negotiation process. So since gateway process is sending request, so at this time, okay, while accepting request, the role of this negotiation process will be provider. So which means to accept the request, so first you have to configure the interface for your negotiation process. And then, so he will complete the process. Okay, negotiation task will be done. And after that, so he is going to send the callback. Okay, after that, he is going to send the callback. So as a web service client, he will be sending the callback. So this time, so here you have to define the interface to accept the callback. So at one time, the caller, the client will become the provider, and at the same time the provider also will become the client. So both will be having both the roles. So whichever role you have as a provider, so there you have to create the interface first. So provider role you have to create first. Okay, you have to create the provider role first. So then you configure the client role. Okay. Now how can you enable this communication here? Okay, how can you enable this communication? Or how you will be calling this business process? So two ways you can call the business process. Okay, you can call the business process two ways. So one, you can send the request at the end. Okay, you can send the request at the end. Okay, you can, as a client, you can send the request at the end. So if you do that, you will not be having async with callback feature. You will be having only one-way web service call. But if you want to implement the most important feature of BPM currently, so which is async with callback, so you will be calling your web services in between the process. Okay, here you will be calling your process. So for that you will be using the intermediate message events. So when you want to call web service while in between your process, for calling a web service you will be using throw intermediate message event. And to accept the request you will be using the catch intermediate message event. So you will be using the intermediate message events to implement the complete async with callback. So you send the request and you'll wait for the response. Okay. So first I will configure the negotiation process, because it is, as a provider he is going to accept the request. So that's why, so go to negotiation process. So I'll give the name for the activity. Okay, accept negotiation request. Now, so change the trigger type to message. Okay, change the trigger type to message. So I'm going to define the parameters here. So go to parameters, new parameter. So in bomb type, select the object. So the one that we have, loan app. Okay, no. Okay, negotiation request. No. So that I'm going to specify here. So select that. So go to interface. Then so now I have the provider interface. Okay, I have the provider interface. Now I'm going to send the request to this provider from my business process. So select loan process, and then so I'm going to create event. Okay, intermediate event. So since I want to send the request, so I'm going to change the trigger type to throw message intermediate event. Okay, throw message intermediate event, and select send one-way request. Okay, so let's send one mail request. Okay, so you have to select the interface. So select the interface, and then you select accept negotiation request. Okay, so accept negotiation request. And you can see, so since you're using the communication, okay, since you're using communication, you're using abstract Visual, so you can see the transport is set to service virtualization. Okay, the transport is set to service virtualization. Okay, the transport is set to service virtualization. Okay, so you have to pass request data. Okay, you have to pass request data to this application. So now we have to create parameters here. So parameter creation in BPM, for inter-process communication, it's very tricky it is, and it is error prone. So you have to be very careful while doing the configuration, because each parameter will be having a direction defined. So sometimes your request will be inbound and the same request will be outbound also. Okay, so the direction should be specified properly. So if you don't specify it properly, so at runtime you will get error. Okay, so I'm going to define parameter. So first your process has to accept the request, and then it's going to send out that request. So for the same request parameter, two modes you have. So one as in, and at the same time the same one you will be sending out. So I'll configure new parameter. So in bomb type will be loaner. So this one I'm going to name it as loan request in. Okay, loan request in. So select your start event, trigger type message, and go to interface and specify the loan request. Okay, loan request. So go to general, and this will be accept load. Okay, now the same parameter I will be sending out. Okay, the same parameter I will be sending out for negotiation. So, new parameter, BOM type. So specify the type as loan app. But this time you have to set the type as out. Okay, set the type as out. And then name it. Okay, now so select this activity. So go to input to service. First, now you see it will show all the parameters it will show. So you better avoid displaying all the parameters because mappings will become very complicated. Okay, the mappings will become very complicated. Okay, so only required one CD step. So interface and place. So I just want to show only this negotiate request message. Add it and the mode is outbound it is. Okay, now so input to service and there you have auto map. So select the auto map option. So parameters are mapped. But the thing is, this negotiate request message is not yet created. Okay, the request message is not yet created. Okay, so this is not yet created. So without creating an object, you cannot use it. So if you want to create the objects, if you want to, do the mapping manually, you have to use scripting. So you can use the explicit scripters. Okay, you can use explicit scripting, so using script class. Or you can use the scripting at the activity level. Okay, you can use the scripting at the activity level. So select the script. So initiate script and select. Okay, initiate script, JavaScript. So you have to create the object now. Okay, you have to create the object. So if you want to work with the business objects or whenever you want to transform business object, you have to use business data service. Okay, or you have to use BDS. So let's invoke the BDS. So to create the class objects using BDS, okay, to create the class objects using BDS, you have to invoke the factory method. Okay, you have to invoke the factory method. For every package, okay, for every package or for every business object model, one factory will be created. Okay, one factory method will be created. So that you have to use. Okay, so control space. So there you can see the factory method. and this is your package name. So com example concept underscore 1 of your business object model. Okay, select that. So dot, so create loan app. Okay, so create loan app. And then specify your local object type. So which is negotiation request message. Okay, negotiation request message. Now, so this object should be populated with so the data from your actual inbound request. So equals to, now what I'm going to do is, so to make the thing simple, the entire incoming request object I'm going to store into this negotiation request message. Okay, so to copy the entire a business object, you will be using script util. Okay, you will be using script util. Okay, so it's like in BW also we have. So in the mapping wizard it will show you make a copy option. So invoke the script util dot copy. So and specify what you want to copy. So we want to copy the entire inbound loan request message. Okay. So or if you want to pass only partial data, you have to specify like this. So each parameter you have to map. Dot app age and all. Each one you'll have to map. Okay. So I'll just log this. So if you want to log to BPM node, you can use log option. So log dot write. And whatever you want to log it. Okay. Now, so using this, you will send the request. Now let's take this request here. So this activity is acting as a client, and with that you get the request here. Okay, so they do negotiation. So I'll create one human service task here. So create task. So this task will be of human. So I'll select user task. Okay, negotiate. So he is going to enter two outputs. Okay, so he is going to enter two outputs. So based on condition, you will be, you will send out the outputs. So specify one gateway. Okay, specify one gateway. And I will specify one more end event. So this time I am having two end events. Okay, I am having two end events. Okay, fail code. Okay. So here, so you can call the web service even using end message event. Okay, you can call the web service using end message event also. Okay, so select that end event and change the result type to message. Okay, change the result type to message, and then specify send one-way request. Okay, select send one-way request. Okay. So select the second one and do the same for that also. So result type message, send one way request. Okay, send one way request. That's it. Okay. Okay, now, so this process is acting as web service client now. So as a client, you will be sending out the request. Okay, as a client, you will be sending out the request. Okay, as a client, you are sending out the request. So that's why, so before doing any configuration here, okay, before doing any further configuration, so first you have to specify, you have to create the interface. Okay, you'll have to create the interface. So let's create the interface first. So as provider in the loan process. Okay, so the loan process is going to take the callback from this particular application. So whoever is going to accept the callback, so there you need to define the interfaces. Okay. Okay. Now, so let's define interfaces first. Now, so go here. Now you will be getting two callbacks. Okay, so you will be having, there is a chance of receiving the negotiation success, or there is a chance of receiving even negotiation failed. Okay, negotiation failed. So either one, you have to take it and you have to resume your flow. Okay, either response you have to take and you have to resume your flow. Or in some cases, you may be sending requests to two systems. Okay, you may be sending requests to two systems. So whoever sends response first, okay, whoever sends response first, you want to go ahead with the flow. Like in BW you have pick first. Okay, in BW you have pick first. So pick first activity, what it does? So whichever application sends response first, it will take that response and it will complete the flow. So similar to pick first, I want to implement here. So when you want to implement the thing which is related to pick first, you will be using one gateway. Okay, you will be using one gateway. So that gateway is called event-based gateway. Okay, that gateway is called event-based gateway. Okay, so think of pick first how it works in BW. Exactly the same here, but the only difference is there the pick first work with only synchronous communication. Here this event gateway works with the async callbacks. So whichever callback you receive first, you want to continue with the flow. Now, so take the event-based gateway. So remember, it is exactly similar to pick first. Okay. And when you are using this event-based gateway, you will be specifying at least two. Okay, you'll be specifying at least two. Okay, you'll be specifying at least two message events. Okay, you'll be specifying at least two message events. Okay, so select create event. And create another event. And so whenever you configure event gateway, you always supposed to configure timeout, because you cannot wait forever. Okay, you cannot wait forever. So you are supposed to always configure one timeout. Okay, always you are supposed to configure timeout. So again, one more intermediate event. Okay, now so change the trigger type to message. So catch message it is. Okay, change the trigger type to catch message. So, and then name it. Okay. Now, okay. Now this will be the timer. So specify catch timer. Okay, specify catch timer and specify the timeout event. So you will wait for okay, so you'll be waiting for 5 minutes to complete the negotiation. Okay. So that time interval you have to specify. So specify that. Okay, you can specify in any using anything. If you want to specify the time dynamically, you will be using JavaScript. Or if you want to specify constant period, you will use the constant period. Okay, specify the constant period and specify minutes, 5 minutes. Okay, I'm using 5 minutes. So it will be waiting for 5 minutes. Okay, it will be waiting for 5 minutes. Okay, now, so this is the other intermediate message event. So this is accepting the failed callback. Okay, accepting negotiation failed callback. And this will accept the negotiation success callback. Okay, successful. So now we have the providers configured. Okay, so we have to configure the parameters now. So go to parameters. So select new parameter. Okay, now so select in. So you're going to get the callback in. So go to bomb type and specify callback dot. Okay, accept negotiation message. Okay, so So create another parameter of type in, bomb type, and again select the callback doc. Okay, fail call. Okay, and this you're going to specify here. So select it. So go to interface, then so go to parameter, compress, and then so select success message. Okay. Now select this one. So you see all the parameters are mapped. So it's very, it's very error prone. So in BPM, the most problem we come across is with the business objects only. Okay. So you should refer them the proper ones. So see, everything is mapped to everything. So this results into error. So interface, and keep only the required one. So this is the fail message. Okay. And when you see the input to process, so you'll be having, what's this? It's failed, right? It should be failed. Okay. Okay. So we have the parameters defined here, and the interfaces have been configured. Okay, the interfaces have been configured. So these interfaces we have to use there. Now go to negotiation process, and then refer the interface from here. Select this. So go to operation. Select. So we have two interfaces here, fail callback and success callback. So this is for what? So the first one is for sending out success callback. Select. And the second one is for sending failed callback. Okay, select failed. Okay, now. So now you have to create these objects. Okay, so you have to create the callback doc objects you have to create. So that's fine. So select parameters. So there you have defined in. Here you're going to define out. So select out, bomb type. So select callback doc. And then specify. So this is for sending failed callback. So this will be sent negotiation success message. Out. So negotiation failed message. Bomb type callback. So those objects you have to refer here. So select it. So interface. So exact one you define. So negotiation success message. Go to input to service and do the mapping. Now, so select this one. So interface, refer the exact parameter, fail message. So input to service. Okay. Now, so these objects will be created based on the data that is updated by the negotiator. So that's why, so go to data fields, new data field, so bomb type, callback doc. Okay, negotiation doc. Okay, now so this guy, so he will take the request data. So it is only for view purpose, and so he is going to edit this negotiation doc object. Okay, add data to SI. Now, so based on this data, Okay, based on this object, you have to create these two. Okay, you have to create these two. So that's why now select this activity, scripts, initiate script JavaScript, and then so use the factory method to create the callback document. So which is of type. So success message. Just copy the data from so I will use script util dot copy the BPM object negotiate drop. So I'm going to do the logging here. And okay. And this, so I will copy that here. Okay. And so I'm going to specify conditional flow. So this will be default and this based on condition. So conditional script defined as JavaScript and specify. So down dot so equals to complete. And so from the request object, I'm going to make sure that the applicant ID is copied to the response object. So negotiate. So initiate script. Okay, JavaScript. Negotiation log.app ID equals to negotiation request in dot app. ID. . . 。  . 。 . So since I'm using it, I have to create that. Callback dot. Okay. Now, so we have to configure participant, so that we'll do that later. So this task is completed here, but here still, so we have to define correlations. Okay, so we have to define correlations for these activities. So you can see the reason for error is this one. So at least one correlation data field have to be defined for inflow, incoming request. Okay. So how to do that? We'll see the next class. Okay. So rest we'll see the next class. Okay, Stacker. So we'll meet tomorrow. You're welcome, Stacker.